Have you ever left a conversation and realized you barely listened at all? Maybe you nodded along, but inside, you were already drafting your response. Why is truly listening so rare and so hard? Let me set the scene. Emotional reactivity, or what psychologists call affective flooding, is like a surge protector tripping in your brain. Instead of connection, you get static, inner static, anxiety that blocks real understanding. Now, you might be thinking, I'm not that defensive, I can handle tough conversations. But what if someone blindsides you with criticism, or worse, touches a nerve tied to old memories? Suddenly, your ears glaze over. That emotional surge? It's a classic defense mechanism meant to protect. But often, it just isolates us. Today, we're going to unpack why emotionality makes us defensive, why we overreact, and how these patterns undermine both our relationships and self-esteem. We'll walk through real stories, explore technical concepts like reactivity thresholds, and, most importantly, learn actionable ways to break the cycle. So, ask yourself, when was the last time you really listened, not to respond, but to understand? Let's dive into emotional reactivity and how it short-circuits our best intentions. By the end, you'll have the tools to spot your own static and turn it into music, into understanding and growth. Let me tell you a story. At Briarcliff Medical Center, a secretary exploded at the director over a minor mishap. She stormed out, shouting, "Then get them yourself. I can't do everything." You might label her hypersensitive, but dig deeper. Her assistant was out sick. She'd worked overtime, and stress had her nerves raw. This is emotional reactivity, our amygdala in overdrive, hijacking rational thought with a flood of cortisol. Emotional triggers are like hidden landmines. When they're stepped on, they launch us into fight or flight, or, in communication terms, defend or attack. Have you ever snapped at someone only to regret it later? That's your limbic system overriding your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for thoughtful response. So, why do these strong reactions block listening? Because the body perceives a threat, and survival trumps connection. The result? Static, not music. Messages get distorted, intentions are misread, and relationships fray. Now you might wonder, is reactivity always bad? Not necessarily. It's a signal that something deeper needs attention. But unmanaged, it becomes an obstacle, not a messenger. If you recognize these moments, don't judge yourself. Instead, see them as invitations to reflect and reset. That's where real growth begins. Picture Corinne, an intelligent, accomplished woman. She writes a newsletter about her beloved Atlanta Braves, only to discover a minor error after publication. Instead of correcting it and moving on, she spirals, crying, humiliated, unable to face her colleagues. Why? Because for Corinne, criticism didn't just challenge her facts, it challenged her self-worth. Here's the tricky bit. Her reaction was what psychologists call a disproportionate response. The technical term here is shame sensitivity. When a comment triggers deep-seated insecurities, it's like hitting a bruised nerve. The pain isn't about now, it's old, echoing from childhood wounds where mistakes equaled ridicule or rejection. Many of us think, I can take criticism, but the truth is, we all have areas where feedback cuts too close to the bone. That's normal, but unchecked, it prevents us from learning or connecting. So, next time you feel that sting, pause. Ask, what's really bothering me? Often, it's not the words, but the memory they awaken. Understanding this is the first step toward receiving feedback without losing yourself. Have you ever wondered why some criticisms feel like body blows while others bounce off? Let me share what therapists call emotional scripts, unconscious blueprints from childhood that shape adult reactions. Corinne grew up as the youngest in a competitive, dismissive family. Her brothers mocked her mistakes. Her parents withheld affection. Over time, she internalized a perfection or rejection mindset. The technical term here is schema activation. When a present-day event resembles past pain, your brain pulls up the old script, instant emotional reactivity. You're not just reacting to now, but to every time you felt belittled. Now, you're probably thinking, does this mean we're doomed to repeat the past? Not at all. Awareness is the antidote. By recognizing these triggers, you get to choose how you respond. The challenge is catching yourself in the act, noticing when old shame or fear takes over, and gently reminding yourself, I'm not that child anymore. This is the heart of self-compassion and personal growth, rewriting those old scripts, one conversation at a time. Let's flip the script. Why do we sometimes find it hard to tolerate others' mistakes or emotions? Here's a tough truth. We're likely to be as accepting of others as we are of ourselves. Psychologists call this projection, the tendency to attribute our own flaws or shame to those around us. For example, Lenny, who couldn't stand criticism, was raised in a well-intentioned but emotionally indifferent home. Without a reservoir of self-esteem, a psychological concept called secure attachment, he became hyper-vigilant to perceived slights. Each critique felt like an existential threat. You might be thinking, isn't this just navel-gazing? Actually, it's incredibly practical. The less we accept our own imperfections, the harsher we judge others. Conversely, self-acceptance breeds tolerance. So, next time someone's reaction seems over the top, pause and ask yourself, what parts of myself am I struggling to accept? Growth isn't just about listening to others. It's about listening to yourself with kindness. Why do simple conversations so often turn into arguments? It's emotional reactivity at work, a cascade effect, like dominoes falling. One person's anxiety or hurt triggers the other's defenses, and suddenly, you're volleying blame instead of ideas. This is where escalation patterns and confirmation bias come into play. Each person selectively hears what supports their position and disregards the rest, fueling a feedback loop of misunderstanding. Have you ever noticed how, in the heat of the moment, you stop listening altogether? Maybe you're rehearsing your comeback, or just waiting for the other to stop talking. That's the mind in defensive stance, quick to react, slow to empathize. But here's the secret. Arguments, like ping pong, require two active players. If one person pauses, listens, and resists the urge to react, the dynamic changes. Next time you sense the spiral, experiment, hold back. Let listening, not winning, become your goal. You might be surprised by what shifts. Ever wish you had a playbook for arguments? Responsive listening is just that, a 5-step method to break the reactive chain. Here's how it works. First, notice when an argument's brewing. Pause your impulse to defend. Second, invite the other person's perspective, really invite it, without interruption. Third, paraphrase their position in your own words, showing you're engaged. This is known as reflective listening, a counseling staple. Fourth, ask them to clarify or correct your understanding, embracing what communication experts call feedback loops. Finally, hold off on your own response. Give it a day on big issues. On small ones, just wait until you've truly listened. You might be thinking, but isn't that letting them win? Not at all. Responsive listening is about understanding, not surrendering. Try it out in your next heated exchange. You'll find that diffusing defensiveness is the first step to real problem solving. Arguments are like fires, starve them of oxygen, and they go out. Your attention can be that oxygen, or it can be the water that soothes. You've probably heard advice like, just say you understand, then share your side. But the infamous yes, but approach rarely works. Why? Because real listening isn't about perfunctory acknowledgement. It's about genuine curiosity. Communication theorists call this the difference between surface processing and deep processing. When someone shares vulnerable feelings, a quick "I understand" can feel dismissive. It signals you're ready to move on, not to dig deeper. Imagine telling your partner you're anxious about a presentation, only to hear, "Yeah, I know what you mean," as they scroll their phone. Would you feel understood? Instead, try this. Admit you don't fully understand. Can you tell me more? This moves the conversation from transaction to transformation, fostering what psychologists call empathic attunement. Yes, it takes humility to set aside your own agenda. But the payoff? A relationship deepened by real understanding. Next time you're tempted to summarize and shift, pause. Ask one more question. You might unlock a whole new level of connection. Why do money, sex, and parenting spark such strong reactions in relationships? These hot topics aren't inherently more complex. They just hit closer to the core of our identities and insecurities. Emotional flooding, a physiological term for the overwhelming rush of stress hormones, shuts down rational discussion. Let me share Don and Shannon's story. After each blow-up, Don would apologize, but Shannon never did. Why? Her family's culture of blame made her ultra-sensitive to self-critique. Every disagreement felt like a referendum on her worth as a wife and mother. If you've ever wondered why you or your partner overreact to certain issues, consider the baggage those topics carry. Are you tangled in old guilt, shame, or fear? That's the conflict beneath the surface. Resolution starts with naming the hot topic, then gently exploring the emotions underneath. Sometimes, it's not the issue, but the emotional charge attached to it that needs attention. Remember, the loudest arguments often have the deepest roots. Dig with compassion, not accusation. Let's flip perspective. Sometimes, it's not the listener's defensiveness, but the speaker's emotional intensity that blocks understanding. Have you ever delivered a message with so much urgency, your tone felt like a pressure cooker ready to blow? That's emotional flooding on the speaking side. Your own anxiety leaks into your words, setting off alarm bells in your listener. Communication theorists call this paralinguistic overload, when pitch, volume, and gestures overshadow content. It's like trying to deliver a gentle message through a bullhorn. Now, you might ask, but shouldn't I be authentic? Absolutely, but authenticity doesn't mean unleashing unchecked emotion. The goal is congruence, aligning your words, tone, and intent so the message lands without triggering defenses. Next time you're tempted to raise your voice or vent, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is my delivery helping or hindering my message? This small shift can turn a potential argument into a moment of genuine understanding. Let's talk boundaries specifically, differentiation, or the ability to separate your feelings and identity from those of others. In poorly differentiated relationships, emotions become contagious. One person's anxiety triggers the others, and soon, everyone's on edge. The technical terms here are emotional fusion and autonomy. Think of differentiation like the skin protecting each cell in your body, essential for both connection and individuality. You might recognize this in yourself. Perhaps you shrink when a loved one is upset or explode when you sense criticism. These are signs of blurred boundaries. Personal growth means learning to stand firm in your feelings while respecting others' experiences. It's not about becoming distant, it's about becoming resilient. When you develop healthy differentiation, you can hear tough messages without losing yourself or needing to attack. Have you noticed a pattern where one person pushes for connection while the other pulls away? That's the pursuer-distancer dynamic, a classic relational dance. The more one seeks intimacy, the more the other retreats, creating a feedback loop of frustration and avoidance. Psychologists describe this as a self-reinforcing system. The pursuer's anxiety fuels pursuit, while the distancer's need for space intensifies withdrawal. Each sees the other as the problem, missing how they co-create the pattern. You might be thinking, so what's the solution? Flexibility. If you're a pursuer, experiment with stepping back. If you're a distancer, try initiating contact before being approached. It's about breaking the automatic cycle. Neither role is inherently bad. It's the rigidity that causes pain. Self-awareness and small shifts can transform this dance into a partnership. And remember, real connection starts when we honor both our needs and those of others. Let's talk about repair, how to heal after hurt feelings and ruptured connections. Consider Michael and Susan. A family misunderstanding escalates to silence and resentment. Michael tries to apologize, but includes justifications. I'm sorry you're upset, but I didn't do anything wrong. Unsurprisingly, Susan remains distant. The psychology term here is unconditional positive regard. True repair requires an apology without self-defense, just, I'm sorry I hurt you. No buts, no explanations. This signals humility and validates the other person's experience. You might ask, but what if I'm not at fault? Apologies aren't admissions of guilt, they're acknowledgments of impact. When Michael finally wrote a simple, unqualified apology, Susan softened and reconnected. If you want to heal a rift, focus on empathy over exoneration. Let the other person's feelings be the focus, at least for a moment. This is how relationships grow, not by proving who's right, but by proving who cares. You've absorbed a lot now. Let's make it practical. Growth happens through small, intentional experiments. First, practice responsive listening. With someone easy, draw them out. With someone challenging, hold back your counterpoints for a day. Observe how it changes the dynamic. Next, notice your role in pursuer-distancer patterns. If you're usually the pursuer, back off, see what emerges. If you're the distancer, take a step toward connection before being asked. These are mini experiments. No need for permanent change, just curiosity. Finally, try inviting criticism. Ask someone you trust to share feedback and practice listening without defending. This is what psychologists call exposure with response prevention. Facing discomfort, but choosing a new response. You might be surprised by the insights and the freedom that follow. Remember, self-improvement isn't instant. It's iterative. Every conversation is a chance to break old cycles and build new habits. Your journey toward better listening and better relationships begins now.